Hey, everybody, this is Greg Sowers, the host of the Walk the Line podcast. Before we get into today's interview, I just wanted to strongly encourage that everybody listen to this full episode. We get into former teammate, coach, and current skills coach Jimmy Warrick's career. We dive into his playing career and how he got into coaching. And then about halfway through the episode, we really get into skills coaches and what's needed and what to look for in a skills coach this summer. So if you have any interest and you're interested in learning more about what skill coaches can do and some of Jimmy's tips and expertise on the subject, I strongly encourage you listen to the full episode. And without further ado, here's the interview. Welcome to another episode of the Walk the Line podcast. This episode, I'll be joined by Jimmy Warrick. Jimmy is a former teammate of mine. We played together in college. We also coached together for Marmion in Chicago, which is a high school team. And Jimmy also was the former host of the Ride the Pine podcast, now defunct, but happy to bring on Jimmy Warrick to the podcast. And I'm sure he's going to share a lot of information that'll be very useful for our listeners out there. So, Jimmy, welcome to the podcast.
Greg, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to get to talk to you here.
Yeah, and we'll go into obviously you're doing a lot of things now in the Chicago area. But before we dive into all that, let's just start. How we start, or how I've started a lot of these interviews, is how did Jimmy get started on skates?
So it was just really kind of weird. My parents never really had any hockey background, but one day I think for like a birthday gift or something, someone gave me one of those plastic hockey sticks that you have as a kid. So I was 4 years old and just running around and ripping it against the wall and making marks all over the place. So my parents figured it was a good idea just to try and put me on skates. And so at 5 years old, I did it, and it just took off from there. I loved it. Never looked back.
Yeah, and I think a lot of guys we interview, it's a similar, just picking up the stick and they love it and they never put the stick down. But in your case, I think being 5'6", hopefully you're not using that same small stick anymore.
I think on my profile it's 5'7", maybe, and then some other places I put I was 5'8", 5'9". You got to really stretch it out a little bit. On skates, it's something different.
Yeah, according to Elite Prospects, you're shrinking, man. You got 5'6", so
I got to call someone there.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked about how you started playing hockey. Just going from your Elite Prospects, but we can start earlier than that. What was the first competitive, whether it be AA or AAA, hockey program you were a part of?
So I started off at Skokie, so the Skokie Flyers. I played there for up until Pee Wee, and then my second year Pee Wee, I went to Northbrook, the Northbrook Blue Hawks. We got to play. We won state. We went to regionals and nationals at the AA level. We had JT Comfer on our team, so that was obviously a big help having him.
And that'll help.
Yeah, that'll do it at that level. So, and then from there, I went a couple of years at Loyola Academy, playing high school varsity there, and then went on to Shattuck St. Mary's for 2 years.
Yeah, and I think a lot of our listeners would love to know about Shattuck's, right? It's this hockey mecca, and Crosby's gone there, and you hear about prep schools, and I know we have a main topic of that we'll discuss later, but I know our listeners would love to hear how your Shattuck experience was, and if you could kind of tell, it looks like you played for the AAA team, but I know they have a high school and prep, and if you could just talk a little bit about your Shattuck experience, that'd be great.
Yeah, no, I mean it was unbelievable. I mean, I was never the best student. I was one of the students that had to really work hard and do all the work and study, and I couldn't just walk into a test and ace it. But I think what was really cool about that program and what they do is they work your hockey schedule into your school schedule. So my 8th and 9th period was practice, and every weekend that we would be going on a tournament or league games, anytime we'd be out of town, teachers knew months ahead of time so they could prepare for, okay, I'm going to be missing this many students out of my class today. I'm not going to take a test and have these guys miss this. And it was the same for all sports over there. And I think what's really cool and what they've built there is everybody's there for a reason. Everyone has a passion there. Whether it's everybody has what they call a center of excellence. So, there's hockey is obviously the main one, but there's figure skating, there's soccer, there's golf, there's biology, there's acting, pretty much all across the board. So, I mean, everybody is there from all over the world to do something that they really love to do. And it was, I couldn't be happier with my time there. I wish, honestly, I look back and wish I could have gone there all 4 years. But getting to go there for at least 2 years, I met some amazing people and definitely grew as a hockey player and a person.
Yeah, and I think so they have the AAA team, but they also they play a prep schedule and a AAA schedule. Is that true? Or are you
Yeah,
playing?
so
Yeah.
so you have the prep team and they're playing they're playing your missions, they're playing all the top teams in the nation. And the AAA team would play a AAA schedule. Like when I was there, we wouldn't go to nationals. Now they do have that team go to nationals at a level below the trip or below the prep team. But it was still, you still play some solid teams. We played like Thunder Bay. Um, we would end up playing a couple teams from Michigan. Similar to like most AAA teams around the country. Just not at the high end level. I mean, the year that I was there, our prep team had like Clayton Keller was a big name there, and there's a couple other ones that were on the prep team. So I mean, they were a phenomenal team.
And so, how does, and we have a lot of parents who ask, how do I get my kid noticed and things like that. And so, with the prep school, is that more of you reaching out to the school and saying, hey, I'm interested in coming? Or with a school like Shattuck's, is that coach, picking his team and scouting for it?
So for Shattuck, it was actually really weird, but I used to do the summer camp with them all the time. So me and my buddies would go and you spend a week there. You're on the ice 3 times a day and you work out and you get breakfast, lunch, and dinner there, and you get to stay in the dorm. So I mean, it was a ton of fun doing the camp. And I told my parents at the time that I would love to go to school there. So after my sophomore year, and I just every year keep asking them. They let me. They have they just have tryouts. So you send an email to the school and they have you come for just a 1 day, 1 hour skate and tryout. And I guess they have like 4 or 5 of them during the year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many kids coming through in those tryouts. My mom actually told me afterward that she had me do it because she didn't want to say no, but she kind of figured that I wouldn't make it. And sure enough, I got
Thanks,
in.
Mom.
And, it was definitely it was definitely an interesting moment. Everyone was surprised, but it was. I mean, like I said, it was the best thing that could have ever happened. That was the best 2 years of high school. I loved every second of it.
Well, that one kind of backfired on Mom, but uh, kind of. I think this will be the last question I asked about Shattuck's. Um, you know, these prep schools now are, and you don't need to tell me your specific situation, but the prep schools and obviously college, these are expensive opportunities, and they're great, but you do have to pay a little bit to get into them. Is Shattuck's one of those programs that does offer financial aid, or is it pretty much you got to fork it up and if you
From
want to
what I
go?
remember, is that they don't.
Hmm.
But I mean, I'm sure behind closed doors, there's some deals that are made just like everywhere else, right?
Right, right.
But from what I understood was there wasn't. I don't know. I think East Coast prep schools are a little bit different than what they are. I think obviously like Shattuck and Culver. I think that they've built something so well known that it's not they're able to have the best players come to them in different
Mhm.
situations. And but I mean, but I agree, it's becoming a little crazy with the prep school. And that's where I think, I know we'll talk about it too, but I think that's where junior hockey is a good option for a lot of kids too, just in different situations.
Yeah, and we'll feed right into the junior conversation. After I lied, and I have one more question about Shaddix because I'm curious. So when I was playing, and I know there was prep schools where you didn't play hockey all year round, and they almost forced you to play another sport. Is that how Shaddix operated? Because I
Yeah.
know I had, but okay.
Yep. I
So
was, you had to play a spring sport. So you still could skate. They'd have the ice there. You can go and, pick up hockey or, do some skills if you wanted to on your own. But you had to play a spring sport. So, that's where I found my new love for tennis. So it was, I love it. So now I still get to play tennis today, and I I wish I of play a little bit more of it. It was actually pretty fun.
yeah, are you throwing your racket and stuff
Ah,
when yeah,
so it gets heated. Even the best of them get a little mad sometimes. I've
yeah,
only
yeah.
broken a couple of rackets. It's no big deal.
Well, that's good. That's great to hear. But so yeah, Shaddix obviously it's one of those schools that carries a reputation, and a lot of good talent goes through there, and obviously it's still a high school, and there's hockey goals after high school, and I imagine playing for Shaddix got you a few pretty good looks for junior hockey, and the team organization you went to after Shaddix was the New York Aviators. Now, did they in the USPHL Empire? Is that correct?
Yes,
Is that
sir.
is that even still a league?
No, it's not. They both the leagues I played for in New York have since either folded or merged into a new league. So um, it was a wild run there, but I mean that was playing for New York. It was so much fun. I met a lot of good friends there that I'm still really close with today, and um, the coach that was there, I still work with him. So now, uh, one of the jobs that I have is helping scouts. So I'm one of the director of player personnel. No longer for New York. He moved on to a new team, but I got to work with him and still working with him. It's going to New York really changed my career for sure.
Yeah, and you're putting up men's league numbers here for 2014-15, 40 games played, 91 points, and 15-16 again for New York. You had 44 games played and 99 points. Um, is that you think that's just playing for Shattuck and coming in that much more prepared, or tell me about the how did you put up those numbers in your first 2 years at juniors?
I think you missed the best part of it too. I think one of those years I had like 99 PIMs.
Holy, I've never seen you hit anybody. 96 penalty minutes.
Yeah, it wasn't from hitting. I think better than anyone.
Yeah,
I never shut my mouth, so that was
that's a
probably
good
the
point.
big problem.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tens in there, but no, I mean, it's. I think it was a lot of things. I think it was definitely, obviously playing at Shattuck, it helped me get to a higher level, helped me really grow my game and build my my skill set. But more so from that, it was, I think I had a lot more confidence going into that situation. Having played at Shattuck, like you said, it carried a lot, and I was able to come in and be confident in myself and my game. But I also had a coach that truly believed in me. And I know, like I said, we'll talk about it later too. But I mean, just having a coach that believes in you and is willing to put their trust into you and give you opportunities, like that was the biggest thing for me. I was, could I have played at a higher level? Maybe, but was I going to get the amount of ice time that I got? Was I going to get, the power play time, the penalty kill, getting all the opportunities to have the success and put up numbers like that? Probably not. So, for me, my thought was I'd rather go and play and have schools see that, maybe I should be playing at a little bit higher level, but I'm able to put up this much points.
Right. And like I think we've talked about it in another podcast. It's finding a situation that fits you. There's hundreds and hundreds of paths you can take, but you don't want to go to play for an organization or a level just because it has that uh, you know social stigma behind it. And we'll talk about our NCAA careers here in a second, but having if you want to go play in the USHL or the NA or play NCAA hockey. And you're not going to, get the ice time. It's like there's other options out there. And at the end of the day, we all end up in men's league or end up playing tennis. So, so it's, yeah, I mean, it's fine and the right fit for you. And it sounds like you did that in New York. How did, how did you come about, playing for New York? Did the coach scout you at Shattuck's, or did just a relationship prior?
It was the wildest thing. I mean, I'll be 100% honest. I was pretty much in the same boat as a lot of kids these days. Like, I was thinking it's North American League or bust. I shouldn't play tier 3. I mean, I'll be 100% honest. I was probably a day or two away from quitting hockey and just saying, all right, I'll go to school and, maybe play club. But, just someone that was kind of in my network that I didn't really know too well. He reached out to my best friend's dad and asked if I was playing anywhere, and he said I didn't have a spot anywhere yet, or I was still looking, and kind of connected me with the coach in New York, and it just took off from there. I got to talk with the coach in New York and loved everything that Mike was saying, and kind of hit on all the points of stuff that I was looking for. So, I went from a day away from probably quitting and hanging him up to, now getting to do this full time and
Yeah.
being fully in the game. It's wild how it all happens. But I mean, again, I every path I tell all the kids that I work with, every path is so different, and everyone has a different, journey to where they're going. But, I couldn't be happier with everything how it unfolded.
Yeah. And you were very happy playing for New York. And then we moved to Aurora. So me and Jimmy played NCAA Division III hockey for Aurora University. We both came in, or I was there the year before you. But yeah, so how did you're playing in New York? Was it Coach Buchanan that reached out to you, or were you sending off emails? How did you end up at Aurora University?
So that same my best friend's dad, he kind of helped get Brian Dempsey in touch with me, and they were going back and forth and talking, and I've at that point I've been away from home for 4 years, and Aurora was one of the first teams to kind of reach out, and I just immediately was glad to have the opportunity to come back home and be close to home. And so, I loved everything that Brian was saying. And, Chris Wickersham was another coach that was talking to me a lot, and Buchanan, the same thing. So, I mean, I loved the coaching staff, and so I had no worries about committing there at the time. So it was definitely good with that coaching staff.
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously there's a lot of. I mean, Brian helped me out too, in getting. I was going to the school, and Coach Dempsey, obviously, and you got to have people in your corner, and it's all. I mean, a big part of this is making those connections, and having people support you and put in a good word for you. And he was definitely one of those guys that helped me at Aurora, and sounds like he helped you too. So that's good to hear. So we don't need to get into our exact experiences, but personally, I wouldn't change a thing. And for those of you who don't know, Jimmy played 1 year of NCAA D3. I played 3, and then made a decision to play club my senior year for a bunch of different reasons. But one thing I do want to touch on with you, Jimmy, is you played 14 games your first year as a freshman. Didn't exactly rack up the points, but can you just talk about your experience and playing a team that we didn't win many games, and just talk about now you're playing NCAA Division III. You kind of, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I mean that was my goal, to play NCAA.
Yeah.
And kind of what that reaching that goal, and then ultimately what that experience was, without being too harsh.
No,
What that? Yeah, go ahead.
no, I mean, you know what? I was in the same boat as you. I mean, there's a lot of things stacked against, I'm sure you as well, but I mean, everybody goes through adversity and stuff. But I mean, for me, like you said, I was undersized. I didn't have, world renowned talent in any of the regard. I think for me, I relied a lot on my skating. I think I was definitely a good skater, but outside of that, like I just wanted to make a career out of what I could with just my work ethic and compete and willingness to go through anything. So, I had an old coach of mine. When I was kind of deciding on if I wanted to continue playing college or transfer or, what I wanted to do, he said it best. He's like, nobody would have expected, you played 14 more games than anybody would have expected you to play NCAA.
Mm-hmm.
I thought really hard about that. You know, there's not a lot of kids that get the opportunity to play NCAA hockey, and, it's definitely a grind. But I was extremely fortunate to get the opportunity to play it. Like you said, it didn't go about the way that I was hoping for. Obviously, I think, obviously when just, a lot of kids go through it, the new coach comes in that didn't commit to you. Um, they have different agendas and, whatever that may be. So, but for me, I look back on it, after my freshman year, I was offered a coaching job, and, the stars kind of aligned there with what I'm doing now. So I think I'm a big believer that everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, us being in the same boat, for those of you who don't know, I mean, NCAA D3 and NCAA D1, I mean, the skill level is, I mean, depends on the program or the school you're at, but it's, I mean, you have the Adrians and like, St. Scholastica's and the Hamlins, like those teams compete with, and they actually end up playing D1 teams sometimes throughout the year. It's still very good hockey, but one of the things I did want to touch on is, we're coming out of juniors. I wasn't taking, you know, classes in juniors. I was just playing hockey and working and having the time of my life. And then all of a sudden, I'm sitting in a classroom again. I'm the oldest freshman uh, ever, Van Wilder style. But I mean, you take those years off, and now you're back in the classroom, and you're expected to, get your homework done. I was working. We were coaching together, and on top of that, you're skating every day. You're working out every day. You have, these team functions you have to attend. Um, I mean, for me personally, I mean, a lot of my time management skills came from what I learned at Aurora, just balancing all those different hats and doing, pretty much everything on my own. Mom and dad aren't around anymore. I got a college roommate paying the rent. Like, it's a big life changing experience. I didn't know if you wanted to share anything about, your freshman year playing Division 3.
Oh, I mean, I loved it. It was so much fun. I mean, obviously, um, I agree with you as a grind. I mean, I don't know, you didn't mention it, but we were practicing at 6 a.m. with our high school team. And
Mm-hmm.
that was just quite the setup for me. So I had to getting up at like 5, going to practice. Then we're going right back to the classroom.
And
Then
let me
going,
hold on. Let me cut you off here. If I have a Jimmy Warrick is the only coach I've ever seen get on the ice at 6 a.m. consistently and not tie his skates.
absolutely. It's the
It
way to
just
do
hurts.
it.
It hurts the hands.
It it was great. I mean, that was the blessing of having such small skates. I was told that, the tighter the skate, the better you'd be able to skate. I was doing anything I could to keep myself at the highest level I could play. So, the blessing of that was you didn't have to tie them that tight if you just wanted to casually go around. So
Yeah,
I figured at 6 a.m., let's just kind of get out there and just go for a little flow skate.
yeah. Those were 6 a.m. is always tough, but you know, not to share my own story, but I mean, I was working at that rink, so I would sometimes close the rink at like 1 a.m. I'd go back to my apartment, sleep for 4 hours, come back, coach Marmion. Then I go to class, and then we'd have our NCAA practice. Then I go to class again, and then I'd work after that. It's just like it was a constant grind.
Oh my God.
um, but yeah, let's if do you have anything else you'd like to touch on with Aurora? Because we can get right into your coaching after your NCAA year.
No, I think, it was, like I said, I think it definitely could have gone better. I think there was a lot of things that went wrong on both ends, on, things I could have done better, things I think coaching staff could have done better there, but that's all in the past. And like I said, it leads to something better now.
Right. Maybe we'll have another podcast in the future about
Oh
all
man.
about that. So so yeah, you get offered a coaching position while you're at Aurora playing. Um, and we'll just dive right in. So how did what was your first coaching gig? And if you want to start a Marmy, and we can do that. But yeah, how did you get involved with coaching after college?
So, I mean, I was kind of like student coaching all pretty much since I was like 12. And I mean, I knew I was never going to play in the NHL. I was not, as much as I was hoping I could, I knew I was never going to, be making millions of dollars. And I knew there was going to have to be a career path for me down the line. And, just from coaching when I was so young, I thought, I really want to do this. I really want to be a coach. And, so after my freshman year, I was offered to coach the Chicago Young Americans U18 team as an assistant there. So they're now the Windy City Storm, but they so that was, I mean, I got to be an assistant coach there. On top of that, I was also scouting for the Johnstown Tomahawks in the North American Hockey League. So I kind of got to do, the best of both worlds. I was coaching there, coaching, AAA hockey at the U18 level, as well as scouting U16 and U18 players. So getting to see what teams are looking for and then trying to bring that to my team and learning along the way from guys that I was working with. So so that was a lot of fun. And then then the second year I was lucky enough to get a scouting job with the London Knights, and I was still coaching at CYA as well as coaching at the Winter Club. So it was definitely a grind of a schedule to be. I think I watched close to 100 games for London that year. I had, coaching CYA U18 again, and then also coaching a squirt team at the Winter Club. So it was a lot of driving, a lot of stuff, but I mean, it was, I'm getting to do, like we talked about, I was getting to do what I love.
Yeah, and we'll go more into I know you have the Warrick Hockey Advantage in just a bit here, but you know, the, part of the reason I wanted to coach is, I've had good coaches and I've had coaches I didn't agree with, while I was playing. But I mean, the main reason I wanted to coach is, I've learned so many things from so many different people, and I think you can say the same. Like the game of hockey's given both of us so much. Like I essentially owe my life to it. It's I've done it since I was 4 years old, and at this point when our playing careers are over, and I'm playing men's league, but like this podcast and coaching, and you're always looking for a way to give back, and help kids that were in your spot and try to move them up, and you get a lot of joy in seeing those kids that you had at a young age, move up, whether it's, their peewees moving to Bantams, or, I had kids in high school that are playing junior hockey and now they're playing college. Like it's really cool to see that progression and know you had some part of that. So I didn't know what was your, I guess the question out of this, I guess, what was your motivation to get into to coaching?
I think it was just like you were saying, it was, getting to see that you're making a difference. My kind of like aha moment came when I was in high school. I was, I kind of was starting Warrick Hockey Advantage. I remember I was 13 years old, and I was assistant coaching a mite team, and I felt like I was a superstar. But I I
It's hard.
remember
It's hard to feel like a superstar when all the kids are the same height as you, though.
so I was having, I remember I would buy ice from one of my coaches, and my my parents would have to drive me to the rink, and I would run like a clinic for like 6 or 7 mites. And I loved it. It was so much fun to work on, coming up with a practice plan. And then, at the end of the season, a couple of the parents, just said wonderful things. Just, my kid loves playing for you, or he looks up to you so much, just stuff like that, I wouldn't have realized that made such a big difference. I was 13, 14 years old. I was like, all right, this is cool. I get to do this. And, lead the charge, but then seeing that you make a difference, and then kind of remembering when I played that, there were so many coaches that I looked up to, and I thought they were just superheroes at such a young age. So I think, for me, it was just getting to see the difference that you're making in a player's career, but also in their life, that you get to, teach them so many different things. And, I think that hockey players, the majority of hockey players are well mannered, and they learn how to truly be kind of good people just from the game.
Yeah, and I
You
think
know,
hockey's one of those sports where, there's a debate like, does hockey, make you have better character and things like that? But I mean, I truly believe it does. I mean, it touches on so many things that relate to life, and the experiences you have, and the the trials of, through a season that you go through, and the grind. It's like it can prepare you for a lot more than just what happens on the ice. But one thing you touched on there, and I want to go back to, is you get that feedback from parents. And you know I don't have a kid. I don't think you have a kid,
nope.
but but I think I think there's parents, and we'll never understand it until we have our own. But what it's like to have your child, be coached by somebody else that's not you, and they can sniff out the BS if you're just there for the money grab, there to just put the kid through the motions. But when those parents, or even a kid, reaches out and says, I really appreciate taking the time with me and helping me with these things. It's like it really makes it worth it, knowing that the parent actually realizes that you're invested in their kid, and you're trying to do the right thing. And it's not just the financial gain. If they're, me and you both, we volunteered before we did anything else. But um, just seeing those kids develop, and grow, and having the parents realize, you actually care for my kid and his well-being. And I think that goes a long way with parents, when they can actually see the coach is invested in their child.
100%. I try and with Warrick Hockey, I've kind of, I've told the people that I'm working with in it, and I want the players and everybody to know that they're coming first. I'm a big believer that if you do things right, then then more people will come out to you. That's if you treat everyone the right way, you have the right mindset, and if you care for what you're doing, you're not really doing a job, right? You're getting to do what you love. You get to make a difference in so many players' careers and lives, and that's what's fun for me, is getting
Right.
to see the difference that you make, and then also trying to to get them to move on to the highest level they can. I mean, there's one player that it's so crazy. He was in Learn to Skate when I was helping Learn to Skate when I was 12 years old, and now he skates with me in the summers, and he's playing in the USPHL, the top league, the NCDC. It's crazy how full circle it comes, and still getting to work with him it blows me away.
Yeah, it's awesome when you hear those stories and seeing that progression. But since we've touched on it a couple of times, so Warrick Hockey Advantage, and we'll put it in the show notes, and link it in case anybody wants to check it out. It's based in Chicago, but if you want to talk about kind of what that company is it just you, and kind of the services that you offer?
Yeah. So, like I said, I was younger, and my parents were kind of teaching me how to be a businessman at the same time. So, when I was 12, I started it, and I kind of had it drop off a little bit just because I was going to school and going to college, playing juniors, and then in 2020, I started it full time back up, and it's basically it's a skills program. Primarily in the summer, I train players all the way from mites to professional hockey, to kids that are playing in Europe professionally. So the big kind of, I guess, thing that we do is we have junior skates. So 2-3 times a week we're doing junior skates that have NCAA Division I professional players, U18 AAA players, high level junior hockey players, anything across the board, you name it, as well as working with collegiate girls hockey players, high school. So it's, for me, it's just a lot of fun getting to be on the ice and working with different groups. But our whole focus is trying to develop each player that comes through, right? There's no one specific thing that is going to work for every single player. So, what I want to try and do is create, high level skate. I'm a big believer in players need to be moving. You shouldn't be having someone stand still if you're doing a lesson or if you're doing a junior skate with a group. You got to be constantly going. You don't need to build conditioning by just or getting on the line and going down and back, right? Like, waiting in a corner for 2-3 minutes to do a drill isn't getting you better. So I'm a big believer in small areas, working in stations, a lot of game-like situations. We can talk about it all day long. I hate the drills that you'll never see in a game. I'm a big believer that you need to be teaching drills and doing stuff where you can relate it to a game and explaining it to your players why it's important. Where will you see this in a game? When will this move be effective in a game, and what situation it will be effective in?
Right, and it's not just, you're not just out there for the ice time, right? And we have players and coaches in Nashville that are still learning, but you go out to a rink in Nashville and it's just like this kids are standing in line and a kid's going for maybe 7 seconds, and then the next kid goes, and then after the drill's over he waits for another 2 minutes. It's like there's so much wasted ice time, and especially here we only have the 3 or 4 rinks, and the ice is so expensive. It's like you just try to get the most out of that ice time that you can. um, and the To kind of build off this, the reason for this podcast is, one, for me, it's a good way to get information out to people, but it's also to share stories and what people have gone through. But we do have listeners who, I get some good feedback about, hey, I really like this episode. I learned this. I learned, whatever, can't wait for the next episode. And I think this is a big part of this episode here is, you know, season's over. Now it's summertime, and where Warrick Hockey Advantage does most of their work. What do you have to, if you had to give some advice to parents in looking for a summer program, and kind of if you had any tips on what advice you give to a parent about choosing training in their summer?
Yeah, no, for sure. I think, obviously, I'm not, there's plenty of great skills coaches out there. And I think if you talk to a lot of them, they will tell you, this guy's great. We're not in a business where it's, you should only skate with me. I love that kids are skating with different guys, getting different feedback. Everybody has something that they're really strong at, right? Like I feel I do a lot of drills that are based around skating and constantly moving their feet. Where someone else may be really good at working on stick handling. So I think it's finding a skills coach that one has the criteria for your player to develop the most. But I think staying away from there's some skills coaches that are really flashy, right? They have the great marketing tools, all that stuff, but they may only have 2 coaches out there with 40 kids. Or they have a couple of, high school kids that are with them. I think it's looking at the player to coach ratio that you have on the ice, and looking at, are they correcting mistakes? Are they, stopping drills when they're making a mistake or when they're doing something wrong? Are they going and talking to a player about their rep that they just had? I'm a big believer in, if they're doing it wrong, you gotta immediately shut it down. You gotta make sure that it's not going to get you any better if you're doing a drill and you're doing it wrong, or if you're doing it half speed, right? I tell every single player that steps on the ice with me that I can't help you get better if you're not going to put in the work, right? You're coming out, you're putting in the effort to get here, so match that, put in 100% effort, and I'm going to do the same for you, right? I'm coming in with a practice plan. I'm coming in with a mindset that these are the drills we're going to go through, every single thing. We're going to get, we're going to do this, this, and this, and using video as well. I think video is a huge tool that is awesome to use, even in drills, because I've seen it at all ages, whether it's whether it's my squirts, whether it's college players. They go through a drill and I say, hey, this kind of, it looks like you're doing this wrong. And they look at me like I have six heads. And then when I take the video and show them, they can actually see it for themselves. Like that's the one thing that I believe is video never lies.
Yep, you can't hide from video, and I do that with our high school team, and sometimes with our peewees. It's like the kids, perceive themselves and how they look on the ice in one way, and then they watch the video, and they're like, some of them have never watched themselves on video before, unless it's their mom showing them a video they took of their game. But some of them are generally surprised that's how they look when they just like skate.
Yeah.
It's they think their knees are bent, they think they're getting that full stride length, but and then they watch them, their legs are going everywhere and they're almost standing straight up. It's so eye-opening to watch a kid watch themselves, on video, and you can't hide from video.
And it's, so I think that's the biggest thing is, just making sure you're with a coach that really has the passion to want to get them better. There's great coaches and there's bad coaches, right? All over the place. They're all over the world. There's, like I said, it's, away from the flashiness or the marketing that they do, really watch on the ice, obviously, right? Like they could have a great website, great Instagram, post great videos, but when you watch them, they're just standing in the corner or they're just blowing a whistle, right? Like, I love being on the ice. I love, I always want to have high energy. I mean, I think you can, I think, like even when I played, that was what I wanted. I was never afraid to run my mouth or be excited or get out there and just kind of run wild. Like I want, hockey's an amazing sport, right? Like, as I mean, it's the best sport in the world, in my opinion. And I'm lucky enough to get to do it full time and be involved in the game in so many different aspects. Take advantage of it and enjoy being out there. So I think finding a coach that really cares about each player and has a true passion and wanting to develop them, that's what you got to be looking for, rather than, this is the big camp that everybody does and it's so amazing. But the coach maybe said 3 or 4 words to my kid all week.
Right. And I'm going to put you on the spot here, so if you don't want to answer, that's fine. But we have, I'm sure it happens in Chicago. But here we have, we'll have me and myself. We have the 307 company that does skates here, and we kind of touch on everything when we're out on the ice. I mean, we just had a hitting clinic, so for our peewees that are moving up to Bantams, so obviously that's a little more specialized. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on, do you think when kids get on the ice, they should kind of touch on everything? And I know you mentioned, every drill has a purpose, like how they're going to use this in a game, but just wanted to see your opinion on, we're having a stick handling class, we're having a shooting class, we're having power skating. For me personally, I'm more of the belief of you can do all of those things in one drill, not alone just, 1 hour on the ice. Just trying to see if you had an opinion either way on those.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think for the younger guys, they're, I think for your younger ages, peewees and down, I think that, you can do you can do a shooting clinic, but I mean, just like you're saying, every drill that it's going to have, it's even in today's game, you're not doing the traditional stand facing the boards and shoot and then pick another puck, shoot it against the boards. Like, you don't stand still and shoot in the game, right? You're always, you're shooting in stride. I think that's one of the biggest pet peeves that I have is when a kid stops and does the big wind up and shoots, like drives me nuts. And so, I'm constantly on players about shooting in stride, no stick handling before you shoot, right? I've seen, fortunately, like, there's some people there that, they're demonstrating the drill. They stick handle twice, bring it back and shoot. Like, you're never going to get the puck, stick handle it 2 or 3 times and then get it off. The higher level that you get to, you're never even going to get the shot off. Someone's going to get it before you even take that shot to the net.
Right.
So I think for the younger guys, it's, you can have a focus, right? Like you can say, this is our skate today. The focus is going to be, stick handling. But I think more so than that, you should be, explaining, what kind of like in tight situation, getting out of a corner, puck control, right? Like I think that just the broad term of just a shooting camp isn't really doing anything. Like working on
Right.
shooting, you know, there could be like you can say it's a shooting camp, but having different subtitles underneath it, like that, like in tight rebounds, quick release, anything of that nature. So, but I agree with what you're saying. I mean, with the junior skates that we run, it is, we start off the first 15 minutes is skating, just all edge work. But again, a lot of it is game situation. So working on just stride length and having a puck on your stick and being able to still skate and move at full speed. And then we get into station work or doing full ice drills that they're constantly having to think, have their head up and moving. Um, and then we end with like a small area game, but it's all high tempo, high pace, not a lot of rest. Um, I'm a big believer that when you're playing in a game, you're not going to be able to think that much, right? Like you got to make a quick decision. You got to know what you're doing with the
Right.
puck
It's all
or even
it's all
getting
on
it.
instinct.
Right. So it's, I want like that's the kind of atmosphere you create at your skates. That quick thinking and being able to make decisions in at the heat of the moment.
Yeah, and I think and those are all great points you touched on there. And I think one of the other advantages of having a skills coach or attending a skills session, something that you would host is, it's more of that, interpersonal face-to-face interaction where if you're having a team practice and your coach is on the ice with 18 other guys, you're making a move, around a cone or something and shooting the puck. Whereas if you're out on the ice and it's a skill skate, if the defender has his stick, to his left, or you're trying to go around him, like you can work on those little intricacies of the game of, sliding the puck through his triangle and going around him rather than just, putting your arm down or protecting the puck. It's working on those little things that, a coach may not have time for during the season to stop everybody at practice and talk about, where you should have put the puck in a particular situation. And I mean, as a defenseman, you know, you do the breakouts, dump the puck in, D to D, breakout, regroup. But there are so many little things that a defenseman can work on in one of these skill skates of, shoulder checking, moving your shoulders in a certain way to fake the forechecker if you're going to your left or right, cutting the net tight and kind of blocking them out. It's just, there's so many little things that attending these things and these skill sessions in the summer could, benefit your game and, help you out when your season comes back around.
100%. And
Yeah.
it's, it goes back to just making sure you're with someone that you enjoy working with too, right? Like if you're, that's why I try and make every session, it may be hard, but you know, if it's a drill where I know it's going to suck, maybe I'm especially with the college kids, I'm letting them know before I like, hey, it's going to be, this one's going to be tough, but we'll battle through it and then we'll move on to the next one. Like just being able to be open and communicate and, having a personality that makes a huge difference. And, a player's not going to get better if they're out there with someone that they don't enjoy being with, right? If you're making the skate boring, or if it's, you're not making it something fun for the kids to be at, they're not going to want to come back, and they're also not going to want to work. They're not going to get better. You're not going to get better in the game unless you're truly enjoying it and you want to have that passion to get better.
Right.
I think it comes back to a coach on, it's your job to obviously help get them better, but it's also your job to make it fun for them. Like they have to want to get better, but at the same time, you got to be putting out something or a product that kids want to be a part of.
Right. And just like the parents I mentioned earlier, the kids can pick up on if you're invested in it or not, right? I mean, if you're just showing up for a skate and you're doing the same drills every time you're out there, it's like, well, what are we doing and what am I paying for? It's, adjusting the practice to the kids who are on the ice skill levels. I mean, it happens almost, it definitely happens every week during the season. I'll come to the rink with a practice plan, or I'll have the week after's practice plan prepared, and then we play games. I'm like, well, we really sucked at this and we should work on this practice. And the same thing goes with a player's individual skill level. You get out there and you're doing skating and shooting, and you realize the kid can't, turn. He avoids turning on his backhand side, to go around a pylon or whatever. It's being able to a skills coach can have that time and adjust the practice plan to your player's individual skill set.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, Jimmy, I know. So we touched on the Warrick Hockey Advantage, touched on the playing career. Obviously, I think the skills coach aspect and those skates is really going to help our listeners. And like I said, I've gotten pretty good feedback about our previous podcasts and guests, and I don't expect anything less from yours. For our listeners out there, I'll attach or I'll put a link about the Warrick Hockey Advantage in the show notes. So if anyone's interested, they could check it out. You're based in Chicago. I got primarily people here in Tennessee are listening right now, but you never know. Hockey's a small world. I have a player who played for me and now lives in Chicago, plays for the Windy City Storm. So I'll include that information, but Jimmy, is there anything else you wanted to touch on and bring up to our listeners before I ask you your final question?
No, I think, like you said, I mean, I love, first off, I want to tell you, I love what you're doing. I think that, this is so needed in the game of hockey. There's, my parents were one of them. So many parents go through the game that don't have much experience in playing hockey. Or if they do, the game is changing at such a fast pace. It's so different, obviously now, even for you and me. I mean, I'm coaching high school now as well. And, the way that you coach a high school team now is different from when you and I were coaching a high school team together. It's crazy how different the game is and what you're trying to work on. But I think, if I can share anything, the biggest thing I would say is you got to find coaches that have a vested interest in your player, right? Instead of chasing after the biggest name or the biggest league, or a title, be somewhere where you're going to be put in a spot to have success, whether it's summer skills, whether it's your, fall team, whatever the situation may be. It's got to be the best situation for you and your situation, not, the one path that everybody took.
Right. And that's great advice. And I appreciate the kind words about the podcast. I mean, we're a little more, I'm sure I brought it up before, but, Spit and Chicklets that bring on ex-NHL guys, Hall of Famers, and they talk about their lives and stories and things like that. And they're great to hear and they're entertaining and it's fun to hear their stories. But, the reality is a lot of us are not going to be at that level, and trying to make this podcast and bring on people who are more, in tune with the youth hockey and, the guys who, didn't make it as far as those guys you hear about on other podcasts. And that's fine. But I believe it relates more to our listeners and people are more on a local level of, this is what I could be doing now. And this is what these guys who are in a similar position as me have done or are doing now. So, no, I appreciate you coming on. Like I said, I think it's going to be beneficial for a lot of our listeners, but I'll leave you with this question. It was going to be, one more thing of advice, but you just hit on that. So my follow-up question will be, we've had coaches, tons of coaches, and whether they're assistants or even strength coaches. Is there anything that one coach has told you that's, stuck with you and kind of resonated with you through your coaching career? It could be a quote, just a word of advice. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but
wow, that's a heck of a question. Man, you're gonna have to make me think about it for a second. I don't know if it's one thing that a coach said. I think just what I gathered from all of my coaches and what I try and bring to all of my teams, whether it's the high school, whether it's the squirts, or when in the summer with the college kids. I think the biggest thing that I can that I gathered from all my coaches is that if you're putting in the work and you're not if you never stop working in the game, you're going to have success. Like somebody is going to see that, as a scout, as a coach. If I see someone that's busting their butt and constantly moving and putting in the work, you're going to have success. And I think that's kind of something that may be getting lost a little bit in our game. I think, there's obviously a huge amount of skill now, and we're getting away from, the gritty, kind of grind it out type of players, but there's still that factor of, as much talent as you have to put in the work. If you're not putting in the work, people are going to see right through that.
Right. I think that's a great point too. It's just, we talk about the on ice stuff, but primarily the stuff we're talking about on this podcast is, things outside the glass of the rink, right? What can you do? And hockey is a small world, even though it's growing. But I mean, I owe a lot to where I am in my professional life and my personal life to playing hockey, not just from the lessons I've learned, but I mean, a big part it's the people I've met and the people I've learned from. So every time you're on the ice, you're kind of selling yourself and what you're all about, and you don't want to be the player who's not working hard on some days and working hard other days, because the reality is, even if you're 12 or 15 or you're 21, it's like that coach or that parent of that kid, they could help you professionally too. And that's where, I mean, like I said, the reason I have the full-time job I have now is through hockey, just from knowing somebody. So outside the rink, and hockey can get you to different spots, just from playing the game.
Oh, 100%. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the same for me. I'm lucky enough to do what I do, and I'm in, I love what I do. I love coaching. I love doing the skills, and selfishly, I'll say we are going to do a camp this summer through Warrick Hockey, June 26th through the 30th, with mites through Bantams. But it's, I mean, even just doing that stuff, it's so much fun to get to work with kids that you can tell want to get better at hockey, and just seeing the excitement and the passion that kids have for the game. It's just unlike any other sport.
Completely agree. Completely agree. Well, again, thank you, Jimmy, for coming on the Walk the Line podcast. A lot of good information there, and I know our listeners will enjoy learning from the podcast, and picking a few things, to maybe make some decisions this summer. But again, I'll put the Warrick Hockey Advantage link in the show notes for anybody who's interested. But Jimmy, thanks again for coming on the Walk the Line podcast.
Absolutely. Anytime, Greg. I appreciate it.
All right, man. Well, you have a good summer, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Greg.
All right, bye. Once again, I'd like to thank Jimmy for coming on the Walk the Line podcast. Hopefully, our listeners got a lot of information out of that episode. Obviously, talked about his career, but the main takeaways I think everyone could gather from that episode is the skills coach. The importance of, if you choose to have a skills coach, is finding one that fits and has your best interest at heart. Obviously, a lot of different skills coaches out there, a lot to pick from, and I think we just discussed the key is finding one that fits your play style and is in it for the right reasons. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any suggestions for upcoming episodes, please email 307sports.hockey@gmail.com. And everybody have a great rest of your week.